I'm not supposed to cuss, but I'm saying that is so good. It is perfectly seasoned. The saffron adds so much aroma, floral notes. That body is just like coming through. I'm Deepa Shridhar, and this is Kandeepa Texan, and today we are making cast iron chicken biryani. Woo. First things first, we have to make our biryani spice mix, or actually our bodi. Bodi in South Indian cooking, it is our ubiquitous backbone to most of our recipes. It can be made with charred lentils, added as a soup base. It can be basically part of a marinade. It can be also essentially its own dipping sort of sauce with a little bit of oil. It's a little bit like salsa matcha style. But today we're making a spice mix for biryani, and biryani is a very, very Muslim dish, and that means our spices are going to reflect that. So it's one of those dishes which are South Indian, yes, because you can find it in Hyderabad. It can also be found in North India. There's so many different versions of making this. So first things first, I have a hot cast iron here. It's perfect for toasting spices. I'm going to add my fresh bay leaves. Now, if you want to do this in any order, you can, but just make sure to toast your spices separately. But if you want to toast it all together, just start with your spices that are a little bit more hearty. So I'm starting with my bay leaves. I'm starting with my cardamom, and I'm starting with my cinnamon. Cinnamon. I said cinnamon. I can't say it, y'all. Cinnamon. Cinnamon. Okay, I think that's enough cinnamon. And then we have a little bit of black pepper. Each of these measurements are roughly about half tablespoon, but at this point, y'all know, I'm not taking a measuring spoon. I just know. And then we've got fennel, a little bit of fresh cardamom, coriander, caraway towards the end. And then I already have ground nutmeg, but we're not gonna add it to our pan. We're just gonna go ahead and get these toasty. The best thing about toasting spices is it'll let you know when it's ready. You can hear that black pepper crack. You can hear the caraway. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my pan and then just let it hang out for 1 second. You can see those bay leaves kind of curling up. Yeah. Grind it up all together, and voila, we have our podi spice. Very potent, very warm, very cinnamony, delicious podi spice. All right, we're gonna start our chicken marinade. And as you can see, each step of this particular dish comes with a whole lot of ingredients. It's a very, very complicated dish, and that's because it was made for weddings originally. It was made for celebrations, but also like not every recipe is gonna be like 30 minutes and you're done. This is one of those recipes that is meant to impress. This is a recipe that's gonna take you maybe like a couple days. It actually takes you a couple days. Get into it. This is complicated. It's gonna be delicious because of it, all right? There's no shortcuts to biryani. There's no way that you can make this and say, oh, these are the steps I can omit. Every bit of it counts. Okay, let's get started in that spirit. First things first, we want to combine our yogurt with our ghee. So we've got about some cups of yogurt here. We're gonna add it to a bowl where we can land all of the marinade and mix it thoroughly. So the reason why we do have yogurt in this recipe is because the Mughals, geniuses. So essentially, when you have yogurt, when you have lime, when you have things that are acidic and they have lactobacteria within its chemical makeup, you are immediately having a secret, super powered meat tenderizer. So this is going to be magic. Now, when you add ghee to it, not only is it delicious, but it also helps sort of, I don't know what it is, but the magic of ghee and yogurt in your chicken, super tender, super moist, super perfect chicken every time. So we've got our ghee and our yogurt. I like to mix that separately first, just so you have like a nice homogeneous liquid to start with. Now we're gonna add our spices. So You can add Kashmiri red chili here. I have chili flakes on hand. Remember, we're not making like a traditional version of this. We're gonna make a recipe that has chili piquin in it, which is what we're adding right now. Some dried chilies, and then we go back to being traditional here. A little bit of turmeric, about half a cup of whole mint leaves within the marinade. We've got cilantro stems. I add cilantro stems instead of leaves because cilantro stems actually have a little bit more flavor than the leaves, and especially when it comes to a marinade, I want to just make sure that I'm ensuring my chicken to have the most flavor possible. Some jaggery, add a little bit of sweetness. Wait, get all the jaggery. Don't waste jaggery. Some cloves, and our biryani pori, you want about a tablespoon or so. 6 cloves. Lots of lime. We're gonna use a whole lime. And here's the thing about marinades, y'all. Now, with chicken, there is definitely a timeline to it. So you should at least marinate your chicken for a couple hours, or do not exceed 16 hours. The sweet spot for this recipe, the best version of this chicken, is gonna be within 8 to 10 hours. So basically overnight. Overnight is the perfect time to get this chicken going. Okay, so that is mixed in, and now we're gonna add a little bit of salt. Mix again. And that thing is ready for chicken. So before we get the chicken, what we're gonna do is we're also going to go ahead and soak some saffron in milk. The reason why we're soaking saffron in milk is because it is going to add so much to the dish. And even though we're not gonna see the saffron until we're ready to assemble all of the biryani, we wanna do this step right now because just like the chicken, you can basically make sure your milk is completely infused with as much saffron flavor as possible. I used about 20, I say like 20 to 40 strands, depending on like how potent your saffron is. I have an incredible saffron dealer, so I can go 20, but you know, if you're buying from the store, get 40. So like somewhere in there, right? You wanna wrap that up. You wanna get your chicken out. The chicken that we're gonna get is gonna be spatched, which means basically we took the backbone and negated it. We just like split that chicken in half on the back, and then we're gonna quarter it so that way we can make sure as much of that marinade as possible is landing on that chicken. Okay, so now we are ready for the marinade step. This recipe is not traditional for many, many reasons. First off, there's no such thing as like one true recipe of biryani. If you go to Hyderabad, they make dum biryani. If you go up north, there's so many different variations of it. This is a dish that traveled with the Mughals, and it changed and it deviated based on if the Chettinads were making it, or if somebody who was like on the east side of India was making it. There's so many different versions of how this recipe lives. In that spirit, this in itself is also a hybrid because it is a South Indian version of it, yes, that is based on the Hyderabadi version, but it's also very Texan. One of the very Texan things about this recipe, not just the chilies that we were using, we're using a whole bird. I love roasting whole birds. You don't do a lot of whole roasted bird cooking in India. You do things that are quartered, you do pieces of chicken, but we're gonna use basically a whole bird, and we just spatched it as we talked about, and then we quartered it. So you've got basically a lot of it in big chunks because we want the chicken to take on all of the marinade, but also we want to use the bones, and we want to use as much of that chicken to flavor the rice. So first things first, get all your marinade in here. If I was in a restaurant, I would put gloves on and then get to getting. But here's the thing, I have very tiny hands and I'm not in a restaurant. And my hands are very clean. And these are my best utensils. So, we're gonna use our hands and get in there with the chicken. Get very, very comfortable. And then once you feel like you've got most of the marinade on there, and you feel like you're ready, you're happy with what you've done, we're gonna go ahead and let this chicken basically hang out for 8 hours in the fridge, but I already have a marinated chicken, so we can get to the next step of biryani. Okay. So we have seared our marinated chicken in a cast iron because this is not traditional, once again, but this is a South Indian Texan version of a biryani. What I have on the side going on is basically basmati rice that's in a pot. I know it looks a little messy, don't worry about it. It's gonna be magical when we're all said and done. But what's going on over here is a pot of water that is basically par cooking our rice. And essentially what we want to do is we want to layer our biryani in the cast iron. We're going to cook the whole thing in an oven, which is also not traditional. And then we're going to seal it with a lid, and then we're ready to go. Okay, let's get started. So, first things first, before we start anything, is we're going to start with fried onions. So this is a mix of fried onions where part of it is store-bought French's, what's it? French's is the company? French onions? You know what I'm talking about? Casserole onions, you'll find them in the store. I like to use that with a mix of basically onions that I have fried and caramelized because it gives me like two different kinds of textures. And I like the nod to the, this is like a casserole. Everyone who is biryani purists, like, let it go, let it go. Just breathe in, breathe out, it's fine. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of my onions before I add anything else, because I wanna add one layer of the basmati rice. You can just do it like, kind of like around, about. Want to land most of it on the chicken. I use a cast iron because it holds temperature really well and it's going to give me a continued sear on our meat. Even though the meat is not going to essentially show the sear because it's in layers of rice, layers of sauce, layers of spices, it's going to make a big difference on how we can cook this. So I put a little bit of cinnamon on this layer. Add a little bit of ghee, just tiny bits. For someone who does not know what ghee is, a lot of times people will say, oh, ghee, clarified butter. That's what it is. It is not. It is roasted butter. Essentially what it is it is butter that we slowly roast. And we want to slowly roast it because we want to keep the nutrients of butter, and then we strain it. And that is ghee. It is not clarified butter. So all those people out there that are like, oh, clarified butter, it's not. It's roasted butter. It's better than clarified butter. Neither here nor there. Okay. My rice is cooking quickly, so I'm gonna be a little bit more quick on this part because I don't want the rice to fully cook. I'm gonna add some cloves here. So fun to find your biryani and you're like, oh my God, there's cloves in my food. It's good for you. A little bit of the bori. Some rice. It's important to have everything ready for biryani because when you're ready to go, you're ready to go. I am not using a slotted spoon for the rice because what I want to do is have a little bit of that liquid helping me along the way. A little bit of that starch that's happening right now is gonna help sort of keep everything moist and make sure nothing gets dried out. That I don't even think is traditional. That's just a little tip from me to you. We're almost ready. Okay, we're gonna add final layer of our casserole onions and our confit fried onions. So we're gonna get the final bits of our rice, and then we're going to top this with the saffron milk. Traditionally, if you are in Hyderabad, what you would do is you would get some roti dough, raw, and you would seal it with the roti dough, because the idea behind biryani is you do not want to open it until it is ready. So we're not gonna be able to check this. We're not gonna be able to be like, oh, where are we at on this cooking? Once you seal it, once we say, hey, we're ready, we're done, it's in the oven, it's with God now, guys. We're just hoping for the best. And we've done a few things to ensure it. Within this pot of water, I made sure it's slightly salted, not too salted, but this is the part where I start to have a little bit of a panic attack when it comes to biryani, because we're right at the end and I have no control over it, which is more of a conversation with my therapist than it needs to be on this YouTube channel, but you know, just a little bit of insight. Okay, we're ready to go with the rice, except we have some soaked saffron. Remember that saffron milk? Just adds the last little bit here. Ooh. And look at that color. That's why we want to soak it overnight. The difference that makes, I mean, soak your saffron overnight. Look at that. It's gorgeous. Woo. All right, y'all. We're gonna put a lid on it. I'm gonna shove it down, which is also not traditional. I'm gonna turn this off. Stay till the end to see how this South Indian Texan version of cast iron biryani turns out. So since the biryani is in the oven, we have time to make our gravy. Not all biryanis come with a gravy. Because we're basing this recipe on the Hyderabad version of it, we are gonna make a gravy. They make something called shorba. This is, once again, not traditional. Lots and lots of liberties are happening, but it's gonna be delicious. So let's get started. First things first, I wanna do is I wanna add a little bit of ghee to my very hot pot and some sesame oil. Sesame oil I love adding to recipes because it has so much flavor as well as having a heating component. And we wanna add curry leaves, shredded coconut, chilies, ginger, and garlic to your pot. And let's just like let that deal with itself, get a little bit aromatic, and you can already smell it, especially with the sesames hitting the sesame oil. Stir that around. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add my onions and let that soften. And while that's happening, let's talk about basically our spice mix, which is different than the biryani puri that we made. This spice mix is similar though. We have black pepper, we have cardamom. No, we don't have cardamom. We have black pepper, we have cumin, we have coriander, we have fenugreek, we have chili flakes. You can use Kashmiri red chili, you can use any kind of chili powder you like. You can use our bowl, which would be delicious. Not traditional, but delicious. And we also have some more sesame seeds in there. We went ahead and toasted them separately and then ground them together. And that is going to be our spice mix for it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add it to our pot. Stir that around. And because we don't have something marinating here, this is a great time to add some salt to your onions. Season it up, you know? I'm gonna go ahead and add about almost a tablespoon. Let it continue to deal with itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some nice color, nice aroma. Your nose is always a good indicator of when you can add the next ingredient. I don't want to add tomatoes until like 10 more seconds because I want this to sort of get its own flavoring agent. You want a little bit of caramelization on your onions. That's going to add depth to your gravy. Especially, this is not a gravy that's going to be part of, you know, meat drippings or anything like that. It's a separate component. It needs to hold its own to that biryani. So now we've added our tomatoes. Once those tomatoes are added, you can go ahead and add tamarind water. If you are trying to figure out how to make tamarind water, there is a separate video where we go through all the steps. But tamarind water, different from tamarind paste. Once again, we want to add liquid to this gravy so it has that tanginess, that sweet, that sour component. That's what tamarind water is going to do for us. And then we're going to add just regular water, which is just water. You know, water. We're going to go ahead and get our pot to medium high. We're going to let it sort of deal with itself for 20 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and add a couple cinnamon. This is supposed to be cinnamon sticks, but it's Ceylon cinnamon, which is a little bit softer and it always just breaks apart. So the equivalent of a couple sticks is what I'm doing. Go ahead and get all of that in. I'm gonna taste it and see if we need any more salt. Let's see. That is delicious, that tamarind magic in there. A little bit more salt. And now we're just gonna go ahead, get it on a medium heat and let it simmer for about 15-20 minutes, which is gonna be right in time to serve with our biryani. So, we're gonna unveil it. The real kind of test is gonna be when we grab a piece of chicken from the bottom and plate it. We're gonna see how everything lands, okay? Take a deep breath. Okay, this is looking good. I already know. Look, when something like that happens to your big rice dish, that's what you want to see. Look at that. That is crispy, charry, good. Oh my God, and look at that saffron. What all of that saffron milk did was not only keep the rice moist while having some crispy parts, it just makes it look super decorative. Okay, before we do any plating, let's add some cilantro here. Let's add some cilantro to our gravy. I'm gonna add more cilantro. I go above and beyond when it comes to herbage for things. Whenever I plate for like my supper club or professional things I do, people get frightened with the amount of herb that I use, but I believe in lots of herb. Lots of herb. Squeeze a lime. Okay, moment of truth. Let me pour some gravy in a container. Also, because I know where I quartered everything, I know like a leg is happening here, the breast is right in the middle, I got some wings on the side. I'm gonna go and see if I can get the leg. Look at that. Turn it over. I don't wanna brag or anything, but that looks perfectly cooked. Add some more rice, because I want the different textures of rice. That's why we took the time to layer. I want rice from the bottom, which is gonna be softer. I want rice from the top, which has a little bit of crispiness. I want a little bit of that lid rice right on top of that. And that's what you want. You want rice right on top, like so. All my cameras, are they getting it? I'm like very, very proud of the fact that like we have cooked this chicken perfectly. You know how I know? When your leg bone, you can see it sort of just hanging out past the meat, that's perfectly done. And even though we seared it, everything is nice and soft because it's been covered in rice. But because we did it in a cast iron, you're getting so many different kinds of textures. You're getting crispy parts, you're getting little pieces of the fried onions stuck to the pan. It's just, honestly, don't hate me, biryani purists, but I think everyone should cook their biryani in the cast iron. Okay, let's taste this. I'm gonna try it with the rice. I'm not supposed to cuss, but I'm saying that is so good. It is perfectly seasoned. The saffron adds so much aroma, floral notes. That body is just like coming through. This is how you also know your chicken is so well cooked. Typically, if I was smart, I'd have a fork here, but I forgot to put a fork on my set. So I'm just gonna eat this with a spoon, which I can easily do. Crazy. Y'all, this is South Indian Texan cast iron chicken biryani. It is so bomb. It is so good. It is so South Indian and it is so Texan. Let me know in the comments what kind of biryani you like to cook. And make this one. Take 2 days off. Make a biryani. I'll see you guys in the next video.